find excitement. You can find the visionary alternative so that we can begin to create new models and move that needle. And so I would love, and we'll find a way to do this, right? To list all of, this has come up a couple of times in a couple of different conversations, but the 100 best ideas, crazy ideas, innovative, like wild ideas around housing. And how can we let to 100 ideas? And then it's up to you, enter folks, but and pay attention to how they are voting. What do our people who are directly impacted vote for? What does Metro Council vote for? What do employers vote for? And pay attention to how, and I think that there would be an incredible lesson in figuring out what the best 100 ideas are. We're gonna get it down to 5 or whatever, right? But it's the 100 idea thing. It's a thing, right?
Yeah.
And then have it be a collaborative process of getting feedback. You cannot say no. We're doing this. We're with you or without you. But it forces us to think creatively, and together. So, and you have to say yes. And that alone, that is such the project might be great and perfect and the thing that might save at least a handful of folks. But it also can shift people's mindset away from, oh my God, we're all gonna die, to what if we did this differently, including our politicians.
Well, and I would say we need all of you, because I'm exhausted, because every day it's coming at me. So I can't think about it creatively in the way I can think about it if I was on the outside, right? But because we're in it every day, it's the day is long. The day is,
and you're not allowed to fail. There's not a safe space.
It's not a matter of, we fail every day, and we can't. I can't go home and think creatively because I'm on the one hand, my day, somebody asked me what my day was like, and I was like, well, Mayor Abramson called me because he read an article in the paper about some land we bought, and he wanted to tell me that there was a river under it when he was there, and that's why he tore it down, and he wanted me to know. And I was, thank you for letting me know, that's good information. And then I hung up the phone, and somebody called, and she is one of our residents, and her dishwasher has been broken for 14 years, and she would like it fixed, but she doesn't want to tell me where she lives because she's afraid of retribution, but she wants her dishwasher fixed. And okay, and then the security guy comes in and says, we found some people that are being trafficked and we're getting them out, and you're like, okay, and then lunch, so so you're just like, okay, wait, what are we talking about? So that, you're just, as you're in it, you're being constantly bombarded, and we are moving things forward, but it's such a weird way of moving it that when we talk about housing, and there's so many different slices of housing, right? That how do we get a group together that can come up with, that can be super creative in a way that most of us that are in it are gonna be like, that's never gonna work because this, and this, and you just have to do it anyway, right? You just have to be like, yeah, but we're gonna try. Can you give us 100 people to try it with, even if we fail? And yes, but just, I guess my point is understanding that there is a level of exhaustion in this work that I just hadn't experienced before.
And I think that's to your point of the 100 ideas and then pick and fund 5. I mean, that was, to me, as we were doing the Reconstruct challenges, first as an observer, and then as, involved a little bit in the second one, I couldn't have predicted which ones of those interventions were gonna be successful. Right? I don't know how many applied the first go round, 15? 50. I was shocked. I mean, if you split the judges from the academics to the entrepreneurs to the community members to the everyone had different favorites, and where there was some overlap, but some of the ones that I was like, that is definitely gonna work. Abject dumpster fire. Like, no question about it. I was like, that is such an elegant idea, and the entrepreneurs all loved it. And you know what? Actually, people don't really want to take strangers into their house, particularly during COVID, for the long term. Like, it worked really well in Atlanta. It didn't work here, and that was okay, right? And then some of the ones, like, man, holy cow, that's fantastic. And by the way, 14 million people. You're going to impact 14 million people.
And I'll say that the time for us, and even this renewal, it's allowing us to continue our work in the state.
Wow, awesome. So I'm with you. Let's do this. Let's pick some.
I'm talking about
Ecosystem.
the
Yeah,
ecosystem, and
ecosystem.
I mean, I'm talking Jim's, but my husband runs his own business, and like getting it's CBD, getting investors in the CBD space. You'd think he was, producing cocaine and asking everybody to put it in their drink. It's just like
Yeah, that worked really well.
it did for a while.
Started a giant-
It worked well for a while.
Coke.
It's on my mind because I had somebody test positive and then try to convince me that they were working on it, and I was like, yeah, you're working on it in an LMHA truck, and I need you to not be driving a truck high on cocaine. So I'm gonna release you from this.
At the far end of driving the philanthropic community towards thinking big. I mean, from an advocacy perspective, from like a moonshot perspective, like, can you just talk a little bit about where,
Well, I appreciate being invited, but my mind has kind of gone all over the board here. I'm the oldest guy in the room, oldest person in the room, and I ask myself almost every day: is pessimism inherent in aging? Or do I have reasons to be pessimistic? So, because I remember growing up, old people just seemed always pessimistic. And am I now that? Anyway, but the other thing is, I was thinking about, one of the really big issues that we see at the Keynes Foundation, and we interview more grant applicants than any grant maker maybe in America. And so as a result of that, we get a sense about what's going on, who's doing what, who's doing it well, who's not doing it well. And among the components that we really take very seriously in making a grant is leadership. The competency of the leadership, both the staff and the board. And so there's this Yogi Berra. Some of you aren't old enough to know who Yogi Berra is. But he was one of the great philosophers of the world. and probably my favorite Yogi Berraism is he made this observation. He said, the future ain't what it used to be. And now just think about that. And my point is that most of the grant applicant organizations that come to us think the future is simply going to be the past and more.
Yeah.
They have no sense of how different the future is going to be. And that is a huge drawback, to moving forward, especially in a crowd like this of entrepreneurs who are thinking about the future. And we always try to talk about managing the future is identifying the trends that are beyond your control. And adapting to those trends so that you have a future. If you don't adapt to the trends, then you don't have a future. So I'm just saying, Dan, I think in all this conversation, even what you talk about, there's a huge leadership vacuum
Yeah.
that is holding our community back.
Yes.
And it's in the not-for-profit space, it's in the for-profit space, it's in government.
And I think this goes back to, again, who has opportunities and redefining what we see as leadership and who is qualified. because we're talking about how do we bring uncommon voices to have new innovative ideas and making a place at the table for lived experience, yet we do not respect oftentimes lived experience the way we respect academic experience. So then when we have applications, we, have calls for funding, I'll even pick on, the SBIR grants. You can't get one. I'm on a committee. I'm on an advisory council at the NIH. I am published, but I am not qualified because I don't have a PhD. That makes no sense.
That's a gift.
Because you have a PhD doesn't actually mean you know how to run a business.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Counterindicative.
Yeah, exactly. One or the other.
Doesn't make sense. But it's things like that where we set these arbitrary boundaries on who is qualified, who's not, who is a leader, who is not, and so then we don't give opportunity to the very people who could have the very best solutions to solve the problems. Now, before I started Attain, I ran a nonprofit for 8 years, and I started that nonprofit when I was on WIC, SNAP. I had to borrow the $500 to file the fee, and grew it to a $2 million annual budget before I left. One of the things that I think in terms of capital and funding innovation, it's not just the angel investors here in the Midwest that are risk adverse. Foundations say they want innovation, but then when you look at who they fund, what they fund, they also are too risk adverse, and they are not funding the innovative solutions. My idea for Attain, before I pulled it out, I had it 2 years before, wrote a grant, could not get anybody in the Kansas City Metro to fund it. They were like, oh, you need to worry about your core business of food pantry and stop thinking about building a tech platform. And then, of course, the pandemic hit and everything shut down. And how are we going to get food to doors? And then it was like, oh, maybe you had something going. And the other thing I think, it's not just the high net worth individuals who should be investing and building and supporting entrepreneurs, but I would even push and say the foundations who have significant endowments that are only deploying like 5% of their capital. Where are they investing the capital? They should be pulling some of that out to invest in the entrepreneurs. I'm looking directly at you. You should. You guys.
InvestGlobal.com.
Yes, I mean.
Rocket.
So I'm sorry. It's a soapbox of mine because.
It's only concessionary.
Yeah, it's not quite exactly
So
what.
it's not what we're talking about.
I'm talking about on the cap table,
Yeah,
direct
endowment balance
investment.
sheet, like investment committee investment, yeah.
Yes, directly on the cap table.
So I pitched a joint effort to CFL 3 times now of like, can we do an evergreen fund similar to what Indy's doing or other cities where you can come in and have, a small size funds. We're not talking about $10 million or anything, but something more grassroots, 1 or 2 million, that, continues to just sort of feed. We talk about 1% pledge, Landon Young gave me that a million years ago and it stuck with me, where you have these companies that hopefully become unicorns and have massive exits and then come back and feed the community over and over and over. And I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, it does take all those different pieces. And Louisville is uncommon in that I'm not from here, right? I'm from Colombia, right? This is home. And we have a lot of me's that live here now, and we're all like, okay, this is home. And so we have this, and then we have people that are like our legacy of like the humans that started the dirt here. And it's like, okay, great. I have all these layers of people who call this place home, that make it so amazing, that are all these different levels, that have so much to give, and we're so nice to each other, but then we just can't seem to get like betting on each other. We can't believe with each other. And I don't know what that is and what it is that it's going to take. Sometimes I feel like it's like you just have to, needs FOMO, of like, you have to have a nod from Chicago or a nod from an investor from another city, and then if that person's in the cap table, we can help you in the cap table, right? Or I'll invest, or how does Indy do it, or how does, who cares how they're doing it? How do we, Louisville, how does Louisville do it, right? And I think it just needs a little bit of shaking up of, let's just do it and break the stagnation, right? And we just gotta go. We just gotta go.
I mean, I think people who could step into those leadership roles have to do it, and I mean that like, this is the wrong room for that because this is the set of people who have stepped in. But I think of so many of my friends who would much rather complain and say, well, he's not doing it exactly the way I would do it, or like, God, we got to change the state incentive system, or like, this is a fight I have all the time, like, well, I can't do that because the Medicaid reimbursement rates are, not what we need them to be, and so I'm done. And to me, I think the other piece of this is the invitational components. When people try things, we can't then be like, oh, I'm mad at that person for trying it and doing it differently than I would. It's gotta be, that's part of, I think, cultivating the thing. It's also the opportunity of Louisville. We are 1 degree from literally everyone. Like that is, that person might not do anything if we get to them, and that's frustrating. But
you can get to people easily.
we can get into the batter's box for anything with anyone.
That's
And
true.
that's
That is
really
our strength.
interesting. You mentioned that the sort of 1 degree of separation. We're so much a relationship-based area, both in Louisville as well as I live in Southern Indiana. I've done a lot of work over there. Like same way, right? We're all connected in some way. We've all served in the same nonprofits. We've all served on the same boards. Like we all know each other, right? But no one funds the relationship-based work. It's so strange here that we're such a relationship-based city, but nobody funds the engagement work to build relationships. I had a conversation with some providers working with the unhoused not long ago, and that was the main point that they made, is no one pays us because you can't reimburse for it, you can't bill for it, you don't see the same kinds of outcomes. Nobody funds that going into the camps and building relationships, or being able just to be present for someone, or walking with them through a journey, through whatever it is they're going through. Nobody pays for it. But if that's how we pride ourselves on, why aren't we funding those kinds of things, right? You don't see the same outcomes, but you still see outcomes.
Two things that give me hope, though, are on the people side. I mean, you talked about that primarily from the negative lens of what that means practically, but it also invites some of the people who are very comfortable right now to not be so comfortable anymore. And sometimes they have to be forced into that. The people who are not willing to be risk, we're calling it risk averse, but honestly, like some of it's selfishness, some of it's like a lack of empathy. And I relate that, also to the other thing that gives me hope is the younger generation, especially you guys that have younger kids, teenagers, Madison, I'm sure I already heard from your intro that I know that you're this way. They're so much more empathetic than our generation. Like, have empathy as a superpower in a way that our millennials and Gen X's are like, we're a bunch of assholes. In comparison. So I see the silver lining in that, and that's a long game, but you guys know.
Yeah.